As we gather this morning, we want to invite you to pop into the chat and offer a greeting. I see a lot of you have done that already. Just look for the icon with the text bubble and the word chat and offer a greeting. Hello, I'm here, happy May Day, or whatever you prefer. Welcome, welcome to worship at First Universalist.
Greetings, and I want to just give thanks to Bridget for allowing me to offer some words of welcome as well, since it's something I resonate very highly with. Yeah, we welcome congregants who choose to come and be present to gather for meaningful purpose and the purpose of remembrance. What is it that we choose to remember when we enter a place designed for worship? We choose to remember the sacred in all, that which is sacred within life, within ourselves. We gather to dwell on our capacity for good. That sacredness, that capacity, it's always present in each of our days and each of our moments, as well as in any place we find ourselves. But there is something so precious about intentionally entering a place designed for worship, for remembrance. Wherever two or more are gathered, right? So I welcome you here in this moment, in this day, and in this intention. This is the congregational month of experimentation. And considering this place, this room is a virtual one, we are already in a liminal space. We have already embraced the emergent and creative. So as always, let's begin by giving thanks, for it is already done in the realm of spirit. We have only to listen to the changing times and the whispers in our hearts and move forward gladly. I also want us to take a moment to think about what it means to be a welcoming congregation, taking a moment to welcome those who are not in this room or may not yet fully feel welcomed. As someone who myself has been in many rooms where I didn't necessarily feel welcome and been left out of just as many, I know just how much of a punch it packs to be acknowledged. You would be surprised what a simple call of remembrance does to let those in a space find resonance with a similar intention. So I just wanted to say to those in this room and not in this room, those who may themselves identify as BIPOC, I hope my presence is a visible reflection to mirror the invitation, the welcoming, to be present here in this collective. To those who are differently abled, invisible, and in invisible ways, I hope you know that you are seen, held, and considered. And I welcome you into this space. I invite you to speak out, to let us know any way things can be made more accessible. And to those who identify as queer or a member of the LGBT community, the very nature of your identity reminds us to embrace the emergent and living. The non-binary, which in its nature invites us to integrate paradox, to find wholeness in separation, and to embrace totality. There are so many others that are held in our hearts and minds. Know you too are welcome. I wanted us to just take a moment to look at one another and have our gaze reflect all the love and the welcoming of this congregation. I've heard it said that they will recognize us by our love. And such a high percentage of communication is nonverbal. So I invite you again to practice now sending love through your eyes and welcoming through the presence in your body. And now we'll go into the opening hymn.
Let us join hearts and voices in singing together this morning, recognizing that even as we are singing muted in our own homes, we are creating a song across our city of Rochester, the country, and the world. Let us sing together hymn number 1013, Open My Heart.
let me be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give. Open my heart to all that I seek. Let me be part of the love you give.
So for a call to worship, I want to share a reading by Sharon Wiley. It is said that ministers are here to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I say we are all afflicted and we are all comfortable. May our time together this morning be a comfort and a confrontation. May we find peace in times of tumult. May we here invite tumult into lives of peace. May we here find calm in times of restlessness. And may we here allow restlessness to evolve into action. Let this be the place you consider what you've never considered. Let this be the place you imagine for yourself something new and unthinkable. May this hour bring dreams of new ways of being in the world. Come, let us worship together.
As I light this chalice, and you light a chalice in your own home, will you join me in saying our chalice words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus we covenant with each other and with all. And now we have a reading from Sahar.
Yes, I want to share a poem with you by Marge Piercy called To Be of Use. It's one of my favorites. The people I love the best jump into work head first without dallying in the shallows and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element. The black sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm, when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn, were put in museums, but you know, they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. I often begin with purpose and identity and trauma. Howard Thurman said that what the world needs is people who have come alive. And I truly believe that when we live our purpose, we are radiant and effortlessly contribute to the interdependent web of life. And purpose is like your roadmap or a GPS system. It's following your bliss. And trauma is like a detour or pothole, jagged roads you sometimes have to tread that seem to take you off your destined course for a while. They are soul wounds that often leave rifts in the spirit. Rumi said, the wound is where the light enters you. And in this way, we learn that what brings us pain and discomfort often outfits us with resilience. That's why there are concepts like post-traumatic growth. To use the same analogy, it's as if we now have off-road tires that make what would be a bumpy road appear almost smooth. And identity is a tricky thing. It is at once the soul yearning question of who am I, while also predetermined locations in the social arena. Identity is also part of what we come in with, unchangeable and constant. And another portion is either cultivated over time or changes as we discover ourselves more fully. Social identities are the same. Some you come in with that stay constant, like race. Some change over time, like age. And some are chosen paths, like education. I'd love to share something with you. An image. I always find it helps to have a visual. So here are some of the social locations, some of those identities I mentioned. Recognizing your identity, understanding who you are in the larger scheme of the interdependent web is such an important aspect of life. When you go through life assuming you are a being without race, for instance, you're cut off from the larger human story where race has very much played a part. Choosing to ignore the possibility of fluid sexual identities can trap you in someone else's ideas of who you can love. And who we are doesn't have to be small, and our capacity for love should be expansive. Ability is definitely not a lifelong promise. And oh, do I hope for a world where when my hearing starts to go, I can still follow all the beautiful conversations. I'm known for my exercises and games, and here's one that involves drawing. So if you have it in you to grab some coloring pencils and paper, you can begin to work on your own, or you could just take a look. Let me show you this visual image quickly to help you understand both multiple intersecting identities a person can have, and a comic to show you how difficult it is when we piece apart ourselves and force us and others to live within only one of our many identities. So with the comic, you have this guy, his name's Bob, and they are a striped triangle. They don't quite fit in with the striped folks or the triangle folks as they're living with these intersecting identities. And the one that I drew that I invite you, if not now, later to try out is, yeah, it's another image to show how things like the triangle can correspond to your sexual orientation or your race. And when and if you choose to create your own, I encourage you to. incorporate stripes and polka dots or symbols. Get artistic and add texture. In the quest to answer the question, who am I? Sometimes it helps to be creative. And I do think it helps to take a look at social location, because so often we don't consider it, we don't own it, we don't speak it into spaces. And maybe for some of us, speaking it into spaces is a little bit more difficult. And it would help to take a little time to draw it out. And because I'm really big on play, let's change things up and play a game. So I invite you to raise your fists to the sky, and I'm going to ask you 10 questions. For each question that the answer is yes, lift one finger. So let's go. Number 1, if I want to move, I'm pretty sure I can afford to buy or rent in an area I want to live, and that I will be welcomed in that area. Number 2, I can be sure my kids, if I have any, will be given curricular material that testify to the existence of their race. Number 3, I can arrange to protect my children most of the time from people who may not like them. So lift a finger for every yes. Number 4, I can speak to a powerful male group without putting my race on trial. Number 5, I can do well in a challenging situation without being called a credit to my race. Number 6, I am never asked to speak for all of the people of my racial group. Number 7, I can remain oblivious to the language, customs of people of color who constitute the world's majority without feeling in my culture any penalty for such oblivion. Number 8, I can go home from most meetings of organizations I belong to feeling somewhat tied in rather than isolated, out of place, outnumbered, unheard, held at a distance, or feared. Number 9, I can choose public accommodations without fearing that people of my race cannot get in or will be mistreated in the places I have chosen. And number 10, I can be sure that if I need legal or medical help, my race will not work against me. Okay, so for any of you who had the privilege to end this exercise with 2 open palms, my goodness, what a blessing. Take a moment to give thanks. I want to invite you to understand things differently. I want you to understand privilege as blessings, privilege as something that helps you to be open to life. In fact, I often describe privilege as doorways. I have another picture for you. Here we go. Yeah, so these archways are so wide open that you don't even notice them. And these same portals are often closed and locked doors to others. And to continue this analogy, the maze-like labyrinth, corridors, some need to traverse in order to move forward, leave them depleted and exhausted and not nearly as far along with the basics as those with the privilege to not even notice these thresholds. So let's do a somatic practice. Somatic is grounded in body awareness, and practices are often movement-based. They're really short and simple and easy, and they help you get back into your body and soothe your mind. So we're going to start by something as simple as shaking. So chi shaking, as I call it, and you can rise as willing or able or stay in your seat. So in most forms of qigong, there's shaking. So we're just going to give ourselves a little shake. All mammals in nature do it right after they escape a predator, but our minds have been, wrapped up in the fight, flight, freeze response. And even without predators, we sometimes need to have some trauma release. So a good shake is a very easy and quick way to do that. Another technique I want to share with you is called EFT, or emotional freedom techniques. So it's essentially acupressure tapping to help release emotional trauma out of the body. And this particular practice has been well researched and used successfully in regions such as in Africa, where children have severe PTSD from experiences they endured in war. So we'll start with the setup phrase. And I've chosen one, and it is, even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. So it usually goes, even though I have this problem, I deeply and completely accept myself. That's how you set it up. So we're just going to start with this karate chop point. So just the outer edges of the hands, we're just going to tap them together and say, even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then we'll do the lung point. It's just this divot under and in front of the shoulder. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. Then we'll do the eyebrows. So just tapping the eyebrows. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. And if you want, you can replace it with anxiety or fear or worry. Even though I'm anxious, I deeply and completely accept myself. Go with what works for you. Now, under the eye on the cheek, even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. Under the nose, above the lips, even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. Now, on the chin, under the lips, even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. Now let's do the whole heart and thymus area. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. And we'll go ahead and do under the ribs over the liver. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. Then we're going to wrap our arms around and do the side by our ribs. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then we'll do the fingers, the outer edge of the thumb. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. Next finger, same side. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. Next finger, same side. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. Skip the finger and do the pinky. Even though I don't know how to do this, I deeply and completely accept myself. So we'll revisit that exercise at a later point, but let's just play one more game, just one more. And there's this song called Extraordinary Machine with lyrics that says, he's no good at being uncomfortable, so he can't stop staying exactly the same. And at another point in the song, it says, I'm good at being uncomfortable, so I can't stop changing all the time. Well, the nature of life is change. You could argue it's the one constant. So now we're going to test how good you are at being uncomfortable. And please remember, this is a judge-free zone. It's just a game, but please be honest, not for my sake. In fact, you can lay your fist on your lap this time. This is for you, because as uncomfortable as this topic is for people who benefit from oppressive systems, even indirectly, the same conversations provide release and relief for marginalized individuals. So in the same vein, people who engage this work from a perspective of trauma relief and somatic awareness are fulfilled and sustained by it. God knows we all need a little more nourishment in this crazy world. And guess what? If the exercise makes you uncomfortable, you're working at being the kind of person that finds ease with the ever-changing nature of reality. So again, for the sake of your own superpower of vulnerability and stepping forward in the work of the world, let's do this exercise one more time. So, number one, do you interrupt someone who's telling a racial or ethnic joke? Number two, do you read about the achievement of people with physical or mental disabilities? Number three, do you challenge friends expressing a gender stereotype? Number four, do you examine your own language for unconscious bias? So that's like assuming all Black people are good at sports or all Asian people are good at math. Maybe you don't think too much on it, but in your unconscious mind, you just assume these things are true and forget the nature of individuality and variance and multiplicity. So again, do you examine your own language for unconscious bias? Number five, do you volunteer your time for a cause you support? Number six, do you refrain from asking people of color, where are you from? Number seven, do you think about how many people of color work in the same spaces as you? And especially if many or any hold positions of authority or seniority? Number eight, do you take the lead in welcoming people of different racial, ethnic, or cultural identities to your congregations, clubs, or jobs? Number nine, do you know how to back off gracefully when those same people would prefer not to have your help? And number 10, do you celebrate your uniqueness and efforts? Well, that was fun. I'm so glad you played that game with me. Thank you. Let's do one more somatic practice now. We're gonna do another bit of Qigong. This one is called Bringing Down the Heavens. So it's very simple. You're just going to inhale your arms up and exhale them down. Inhale up, exhale down. Inhale up, exhale down. For the next three, let's bring our hands up to our forehead. So we'll step forward and then back. Inhaling the hands towards the forehead. Exhaling and down. And just one more. Wonderful. I always feel better with a little bit of breath and movement. So now we're going to move on to joys and sorrows.
I invite you now into a reverent time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to be able to listen from a heart-centered place. As I place stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our community that were submitted earlier. You're also all invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat. And we have this joy from Carl Abbott. I passed the 3/4 century mark, and I leave Sunday to visit the grandsons. Oh, and their parents too. I see that Joy has shared that she spent the afternoon with the grandkids with Joe to celebrate Joe's birthday. I will drop a final stone into the bowl to represent the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. And one stone for the joys shared in the chat. And any sorrows that we have not recognized. May all be held in the heart of love. Today, we light a white candle to acknowledge that we are a community affected by the grief, loss, and fear of living through a pandemic. May this candle's flame hold our experiences around this horrific disease. And may its light be a beacon of hope and a reminder that we are not alone. We come to church as seekers, longing to live lives of purpose. We come to ask and to help each other to discover what we are meant to do with our unique gifts, with our one precious life. And we come to First Universalists to join others in doing the work of justice, of spirit, and of caring for one another. This community and its work is made possible by your gifts, your love, your creativity, and your financial support. To give to First Universalist Church online, please click the link in the chat. And of course, you can always feel free to send a check to the church or give online at some other time.
$525,600 minutes.
So now I would love to share a story with you. And it's another one of my favorites. Clearly a thing about poetry. So this one is from Rumi, and it's called The One Thing. There is one thing in this world you must never forget to do. If you forget everything else and not this, there's nothing to worry about. But if you remember everything else and forget this, then you will have done nothing in your life. It's as if a king has sent you to some country to do a task and you perform 100 other services, but not the one he sent you to do. So human beings come to this world to do particular work. That work is the purpose, and each is specific to the person. If you don't do it, it's as though a priceless Indian sword were used to slice rotten meat. It's a golden bowl being used to cook turnips, when one filing from the bowl could buy 100 suitable pots. It's like a knife of the finest tempering nailed into a wall to hang things on. And you say, but look, I'm using the dagger. It's not lying idle. Do you hear how ludicrous that sounds? For a penny, an iron nail could be bought to serve for that purpose. You say, but I spend my energies on lofty enterprises. I study jurisprudence and philosophy and logic and astronomy and medicine and the rest. But consider why you do those things. They are all branches of yourself. Remember the deep root of your being, the presence of your Lord. Give yourself to the one who already owns your breath and your moments. If you don't, you will be like the man who takes a precious dagger and hammers it into a kitchen wall for a peg to hold his dipper gourd. You will be wasting valuable keenness and forgetting your dignity and purpose. I was called into this space to bring remembrance of how justice work is pastoral work. And in my soul, that is the purpose I have come to live. So for me, it's a truth that's common as mud, to know that none of us are free until all of us are free, that sustaining others and the self forms a feedback loop, that some of the most significant work for the sake of justice is to make sure people feel heard and held, to minister to them and encourage others to welcome them. So it is as if they know that they belong in their wholeness of being, which also at times includes rage and fear and sorrow. There's a phrase I use in my work, that trauma stewardship is a radical act of social change. This is in line with a revolution of the heart. I feel people get so bogged down on thinking they're not going to do things right, or that no amount will ever be enough, that they get frozen. I find that to be one of the most detrimental things to the long arc toward justice. All those things that freeze you up, whether you believe the problem is so big it will never get solved, and so you put no effort to its cause, or you feel anything you say will be wrong, so you never speak up, or even those times where you reach out to someone different and in your awkward uncertainty make a joke about that which makes them different and learn the hard lesson of which words sting. And how do we define justice work? Is it all those awkward conversations where we're learning to listen more than speak? From those less privileged, receive more than critique? Until there is an ease in the process, and it becomes like a daily gratitude practice, chipping away at other blaze pathways in our minds and the collective unconscious. I think too often we think justice work is like a picket line or a protest. Though powerful and with purpose, that form of resistance is not very inclusive of the elderly or neurodivergent. One of my favorite acts of resistance is introverted activism. Here's one example. They were writing love letters for change. These letters were given to board members on a corporation making decisions that would affect communities and our planet. And there were protests, but the protests didn't change their minds. However, the love letters did. They also, the same group also sewed love letters and left them in shirt pockets in stores. I enjoy this idea of love bombing folks with messages of equality. Maybe justice work is relationship building, because once you know someone and once you are known by someone, a fundamental change takes place in empathy's capacity. You can feel for them. To be known is half the equation of belonging. The deeper the relationship, the more you feel you can speak without fear of reprisal. The more conversations, the less triggered reactions. And the natural conclusion is understanding what people need. Rather than creating projects and programs for the sake of others, you can get the design from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And why aren't more projects created from a place of shared regenerative leadership? I think it's because there's only so much you can do for those you barely know. So let's stop there, but we could go all day into what justice is. I'm going to take this moment to invite you to create a resolution. Something as simple as, sometimes something as simple as the first step is all it takes, this one small thing, for you to really start to engage the work. And I want you to think of a small thing that you can do for the sake of justice that is grounded in relationship building. And I want to give you a tool or trick to use before you go. It's a simple statement, a way to till the ground and prepare it for this work. I want to invite you to begin with consent. Like, hey, I have a question about your ethnicity. Would you mind if I ask? Or, hey, I'm working on building more relationships in our congregation to support inclusivity. Would you mind sitting with me for a few minutes when we see one another? And if the answer is no, take that with grace. Know you are exercising your discomfort muscle, which is so essential to this work. And for anyone who thinks they should build relationships with a marginalized individual, please don't put all of your eggs in their basket. Making your fervor for purpose about how someone else receives you is never your best bet. Instead, keep in mind that everything is about your relationship with the sacred. Every interaction, every trial, every attempt, every failure, every success. Each relationship sources back to the one, and whether you are in peace and connection with totality. So take each exchange and offer them up. So what will your one thing be? I'm gonna give us a moment of silence for you to think about it. One relationship you'll build. I want to share about a couple projects, maybe give you some ideas. Well, if you wanted to do a project where, for instance, teen boys in your area help the elderly with house and yard tasks, which helps on so many levels in terms of having more multi-generational connections, helps to subvert gender roles, etc. You could go door to door and speak to the elderly in your community about their needs. And your next step might be going to community centers and school administrators to talk about the possibility of starting a project like that. If you need a project design, you can talk to me. Or maybe you partner with a local advocacy organization to suggest the concept and say that you're happy to phone people in the area to support it getting off the ground. Here's another one. Maybe you want to organize a meetup where police officers and families of color have a barbecue and get to know each other, strengthening familiarity, empathy, and community as a result. Then you could talk to other organizations that have done similar projects. You could reach out to your local police station about getting something started and look for Black-run nonprofit community organizations to find families in your area that might be interested. There really are so many possibilities. And I think that way too often when we're doing justice work, we make it so small. It's like a script has been running, and we know that these are the boxes that we have to check to be an activist or to be doing work in justice. But you could be writing a love letter. You know, as a single mother, I cannot tell you how rare it is for someone to come and say, hey, can I help you with your bags and things? It's very interesting. I do it for other single moms, and we joke about how rare we even get the offering. So I just want to remind you that there's ways, small and large, that you can start to engage this work, that a lot of what you have to overcome is just that thing that holds you back within. Yeah, you want to know a secret to social change? It's getting over ourselves. The diminishing self-talk, the awkwardness, the fear, the grasping, and all of those things that are ultimately worked out in the spirit, which is why it's so important to integrate when we do this work. Justice work is pastoral work, because if you are not right with life, you cannot do your part gracefully to contribute to a radiant life for all, least of all yourself. The more of us to overcome ego and our traumas and find ways to come together cohesively, the more impact the work will have. And we have to approach the work from our own unique niches. That purpose, like the bejeweled blade Rumi spoke of, will, rather than meeting resistance, slice into and through dynamics like butter. Finding your place in the work is the most fulfilling thing you will do in life. Do you not wonder how much of that negative inner chatter is sourced in you using your blade as a peg in the wall to hang things upon rather than for its destined purpose? And due to our part in the interdependent web of all existence, your destiny sparks and influences my destiny. It is like embers that combine to blaze like a bonfire on a beach, reflecting the ferocity of the sea. What a wonderful visual. Let's take a moment. Let's close our eyes and see that. Let's close our eyes. Take a few deep breaths. I want you to look and see an ember in your heart and see that beach in front of you. See the newly stoked fire that barely flickers in the wind. The resistance of the wind seeming to at times almost blow it out. I want you to take your one task, your first offering to our collective work of justice and care, and I want you to whisper it into your heart. I want you to watch how the ember in your heart catches into flame. In your mind's eye, I want you to visualize yourself walking a path to that bonfire, the one that is still small. But with every step, the ember, the flickering flame within you grows, and the bonfire is joined by myriad other flames and grows. There is a relationship between you and the work. The more you live your purpose, the more the work grows. There is a mutuality. None of us are free until all of us are free. Oppression doesn't just happen out in the world between people, though of course, kindness is key. We are learning how to talk to one another. Systems have been built which oppress. We are tasked with dismantling and rebuilding these systems. Oppression also exists in our consciousness. You must liberate yourself, your mind, for us all to be free. It is also your freedom we are waiting for. Now, as you get closer to the fire, you find its brightness does not burn, but illuminates. I want you to feel the light warm you. This illuminating blaze with a ferocity that reflects how the ocean symbolizes infinity. Your endless soul has a purpose and is good. We are all trying and needing support. It is no one's fault, but all of our responsibility. I want you to breathe in the light of this fire, just as you breathe your intention out into the embers of your heart. You find this fire of justice, this light, bright thing. It nourishes you with joy as you breathe it in. With every inhale, joyous thoughts fill your mind and soothe your spirit. You begin to understand how the Buddha said to find joy in sorrows of the world. Because now that you have become a thread in the tapestry of justice work, an ember in the bonfire, you have found purpose, place, and solace. And what better reason to rejoice? I'm going to teach you just one more somatic practice before we do our closing hymn. And this one is called Golden Ball Qigong. And sitting or standing, whatever is comfortable. When I was taught this practice, I was told it's something that we're doing all the time on levels of the more subtle reality. So with our breath, we will take a ball and we'll breathe in to expand it. Breathe out to contract it. Breathe it in. Breathe it out. Breathe it down. And then shake to dissipate it. So we've got our ball. Breathe in to expand. Breathe out to contract. Breathe it in. Breathe it out. Breathe it down and dissipate it. Shake it out. And once more, we have our ball. Breathe in to expand. Breathe out to contract. Breathe it in. Breathe it out. Breathe it down and dissipate. Let it all go. Shake it all off. And now we'll move on to our closing hymn.
I think we should do the Qigong exercises during every service. And now we're going to sing our final hymn, We Shall Be Known by Ma Muse. We invite you to remain muted and sing out joyfully from home, creating a collective song from wherever we find ourselves.
Hello, creative challenge for Sustain Us. My name is Kyle Lemley, and this is the Thrive East Bay Choir that I founded and co-direct. And our role in life is to provide the music for the revolution. So we host and are of service to an activist church of sorts that's non-denominational called Thrive East Bay. And we also are starting a street choir, and we're being the music in the streets for different direct actions across the country, including at the People's Climate March on April 29th. And we thought we would just give you a little flavor of what type of stuff that we might bring to the UN in November. So this one's called Great Turning. It's by Ma Muse. And it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
As we extinguish our chalice flame this morning, let us read together the words printed on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with its message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again.
And our benediction. Though we cannot be seated next to one another, we are still connected in this community. And as we come to a time to close our service, I want to invite you into an embodied practice of holding hands from a distance at the end of our service. So if you're joining us by video, please change your view to gallery view rather than to speaker view. Then reach your hands out to the edge of the screen. For folks here by phone, place a hand over your heart and bring to mind someone you love from this congregation. We'll remember again to look into each other's eyes and have our gaze reflect the love and welcoming of this community. Practice sending love and welcoming presence through our bodies. And let the people of the church say amen. And as we come to a time to close our service, I invite you to follow the benediction with the words, I welcome you and I welcome myself in full wholeness of being. So please join us in typing these words into the chat together. I welcome you and I welcome myself into full wholeness of being.
Every time I feel this way, this old familiar saying, I will lay my troubles down by the water, where the river will never run dry. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. By and by I will lay my troubles down by the water, where the river will never run dry. It's been said, and I do believe, as you ask, so shall you receive. So take from me these troubles, bring me sweet release, where the river will never run dry. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. By and by I will lay my troubles down by the water, where the river will never run dry. There is a river in this heart of hearts, with a knowingness of my highest good. I am willing, I will do my part, where the river will never run dry. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. Hallelujah. I'm gonna let myself be lifted. By and by I will lay my troubles down by the water, where the river will never run dry. where the river will never run dry. This river will never run dry.